Hello, my name is Larry Tatum. In this tape we're going to go over basic kicking, and you're going to find that the kicks are your most powerful weapon. But as we've learned before, every movement has a consequence, and we're going to find this out particularly in kicking. Now, I want you to understand that although kicking is your strongest weapon, your legs also hold you up, so an overuse of your kicks, whether it be in a real fight on the street or whether it be in a tournament situation, too much use of it can also wear you out. So it has to be limited and applied at the right moment. And this goes, again, back with Kenpo's concept of fighting, that power is intermittently entered where and when needed, particularly in kicking. Now, there's one thing you got to understand about kicking. It's versatile. Your hands are your most versatile weapons, and they're a lot faster. But as you'll find, that kicking doesn't only apply just to raising your leg and kicking out, but it also applies to actually kicking on the ground, which we'll find out as we go along. Now, with the help of Rick, I'm going to start with the first kick, which is called a snapping ball kick. Okay, Rick, would you face the camera in a horse stance? All right, now, from a horse position, this is be the easiest way for you to practice at home when you're watching these tapes, is I want you to shift your weight to your left leg. And as you shift your weight, you're going to keep that left leg bent. And particularly in the early stages of your kicking, keep your supporting leg bent. It keeps your center of gravity low. It allows you to maintain a better balance. You're going to shift your weight over, and as you do, you're going to slide your right leg over, because we're going to start with our right leg. We're going to raise the knee, and I want that knee to go up approximately waist high. Now, you got to remember, wherever you point your knee is where your foot's going to end up, and we're going to kick with the foot. We're going to kick with the ball of the foot. All right? So we shift that weight, keep the supporting leg bent, slide the leg over, get the knee up waist high, and then we extend our foot. And it only goes out approximately 3/4 of the way. Don't lock it out, not yet. That's a different type of kick. But 3/4 of the way out, it snaps back, and then you put it down. All right, now, you do it a little faster. You slide it over, get the knee up, snap it in and out, and don't bring that knee down until that leg has snapped all the way back. Then slide back over into position. Rick, would you give a little demonstration of a snap kick? Now, the idea, now when I say the word snap, that means that the leg comes back faster than initially it went out. Now, this is particularly important in the street. So if you kick somebody in the street, this is what could happen. Rick, would you face me in a horse? If I was to come over, bring my leg up, and execute a snapping ball kick, and as I made contact, if I left it there too long, he's going to grab where it hurts. And as he bends over to fall, I'm going down with him. Now, this is important to remember, so don't leave it there too long. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we're not going to hold a foot in there and thrust it later on, but that's a different type of kicking. But what I want you to concentrate on now is getting used to bringing the leg up and snapping it in and out. Don't leave it there. And again, keep that knee up, all the way up, because I don't want you to float the leg back down. I want you to bring that all the way back, because we may want to use it from that position again. We may want to just alter the angle a little bit. Point the knee, because like I said, wherever you point the knee is where the foot goes. And if I point the knee to the inside of the thigh, that gives me a new target. So as my knee becomes the determining factor where our foot is going to go. You might say that the knee is like a gun sight. We know if I pointed it at the stomach, the foot's going to go there. If I point it at the inside of his thigh, that's where it's going to go. If I point it at his hand, that's where it's going to go. So again, the knee determines where that foot's going to wind up. Now, as we practice your snap kicks, would you face him in a horse? Rick, would you give him an example of it again with your right leg? A little faster. Keep the supporting leg bent. Do it again. Good. Now we're going to do it from another angle. Rick, would you face left neutral bow over here? Put your guard up. Now, I want you to imagine. Now, on one of the other tapes prior to this, we talked about that imaginary line that we call the point of no return. Rick is going to stay behind this line because each time he kicks, he wants to plant his foot back purposely for that. Remember that where that line is, because I'm going to keep referring to that in the later tapes as well. Okay, snap kick. All right, now from a neutral position, when you execute this snap kick, remember that you pivot your front foot. Now, how do we pivot that front foot? Do we pivot it on the heel and open ourselves up? No, because we learned that in the previous tapes that we don't do that. We pivot on the ball of the foot, then we bring the knee up, execute the kick, and then come back into position. Okay, Rick, do it again. A little more snap. All right, now there has to be a degree of tension in your leg so that you can create this snap or this pullback. It's not totally loose. I do want you to be relaxed as you bring the leg up. But just as you hit, there has to be a little tension in there so that you can snap it back. All right, Rick, let's try it again. All right, now he's going to pass this line of no return, and he's going to execute that kick, and he's going to plant forward, or what we call a step through, which we've learned in the other tape. But it's a step through with a snap kick. Go ahead. Okay, you can do it in reverse. You can do the right kick and go back again. Forward again, and reverse. All right, now, Rick, would you go down to a horse for me? Again, using and referring to that point of no return. If I don't pass it, I'm going to have a lot of balance as I execute the kick, right? If I pass that point of no return, then I'm starting to get body momentum into my kick. Now, this is important. There's two ways I want you to start practicing this. Stay behind that line. Okay, now bring your shoulders forward and actually walk into it. So now at this point, the kick becomes no more than an exaggerated step, you might call it. Now, I exaggerate it as a step just to get the point across to you. Come on up. But if you look at it, but that's all it really is like a step exaggerated. We pass that line of no return, we get more body weight behind the kick. But even though we have that forward momentum, we still have a lot of snap into the kick. Okay, come on back. Now, I want you to practice it with your hands down, staying back, with your guard up in a fixed position from this position and back. All right, now, I want you to practice it with your hands in motion. All right, now this is important. It's a little more advanced, but you got to understand that counterbalancing is particularly important, especially in Kenpo. Remember, Kenpo is built on natural movement, and counterbalancing is a part of natural movement. When we walk down the street, we don't walk with our arms to our side like a robot. As left leg steps forward, the left hand goes where? It goes back to counterweight, counterbalance the leg going forward. Since this side is empty, something has to fill that side because nature abhors a vacuum. So the right hand counterbalances that side. So we have nature has given us a natural stride, natural counterbalancing, right? The same thing occurs in your kicking. Now, when I begin my kick, as my leg strides forward, and that's all it is stride, what happens to my backhand? It counterbalances. All right, good. Now, every movement has its consequence. If you do this, you're also taking a guard down, so if Rick punches, I'm going to have to be concerned with that. So at least, as you begin to come through, if he punches, the other hand can counterbalance at least by coming up to protect you as you execute the kick. All right, now, in different sports of the martial arts, such as kickboxing, they can't usually afford to bring that hand down. So they keep their hands up in the air and they kick with their hands in a fixed position. All right, this is fine, and I want you to learn it that way. I want you to be able to kick with your hands in a fixed position. I want you to be able to walk with it, and so forth, as we plant down. That's the snapping ball kick. Again, it's using the ball of the foot. Now let's go over a few things to remember about the kick. Rick, would you face this in a neutral bow? Bring the knee up first. The knee comes up. The leg is extended only 3/4 of the way out. At this point, when you make contact, you are generating the most power that you can. Anything beyond this point turns into a push. All right? And if you don't want to waste your energy, you don't need that push. If Rick hit me and penetrated enough with his foot, he's going to cause the injury. A break to the rib, broken blood vessels, whatever. But beyond that point, if he keeps pushing, if he wants to purposely, yeah, he may want to push me back into another opponent behind me. But if it's just to hurt me, especially in a street situation, get that foot out of there fast. Snap it back. The injury has occurred, the guy's hurt, and your foot's not in there. You can use it for something else. Now, also remember that the foot is straight. It's not up like this. That's a different type of kick. We'll get that possibly a little bit later, but not right now. I want the foot straight. I want the toes curled up so that you can show the ball of the foot. That's what you're going to be hitting with. That's the position you should be in. Back is straight, head is erect, supporting leg is bent. If he raises up on a supporting leg and he makes contact, he's going to lose his balance. If he bends that supporting leg, he solidifies his base. It adds power to this, gives it marriage of gravity, and this is how I want you to practice it. You can snap it back and back to a neutral stance again. What stance is he in but a left neutral bow? And that's a snapping ball kick. All right, now the next type of kick I want to work is a snapping instep kick. It follows the same angle basically as your snapping ball kick, except we're going to change the weapon. Instead of the ball of the foot, I want you to use the instep of the foot. All right? Now this confuses a lot of people in the beginning because they say, well, how can I use that without hurting myself? Well, you've got to remember now, the ball of the foot is nice because it's hard and it can take more punishment. But the snapping instep, that goes to soft targets, as we're going to find out. Now, it's executed basically, Rick, would you go down to a horse, please? The same way that your snapping ball kick is. I'll start from a right neutral bow. As I pivot into it, I'm going to bring my hand down to counterbalance my leg. The knee comes up. Now, it's particularly good for coming up between the legs. If I point my knee to the groin, the leg starts to move out, and the instep slaps, comes up underneath the groin. All right, now, again, you've got to pick targets that generally allow the leg to come up into. If you don't want to use the ball of the foot to the inside of the thigh, you can complement the angle of the thigh this way and use the instep of the foot to get a type of buckle. If not from that angle, Rick, would you come over here? But at this angle as well, if I want to buckle the leg, I can bring the leg up. Remember the angles that we've learned in the other tapes. I can bring it up, and where the ball of the foot, I could use it on the outside, but if I didn't want to cause that much injury, if I just wanted to buckle my opponent, I can bring the knee up, down, and use the instep of the foot this way. All right? So this is what we're going to do. If, for instance, I'll give you an example of how we're going to use the instep and the ball of the foot in the same technique. If Rick attempts to tackle me around the waist, and I parry, and as I parry his arm away, I make a chop on the back of the neck. Now, my next target is, if he's not down from that motion, if he's not down, then I'm going to go up underneath. And I'm going to use a weapon that's going to complement that angle. And that's, at this point, it's going to be the instep. If I hit him in the solar plexus, his hands are going to go where it hurts. That's going to open up the head. Well, I don't want to use the instep here because, yeah, it'll hurt him, but what's that chin bone going to do to my foot? It's going to break it. Here's now where I go to my cat stance, which we've learned before, but now I use a snapping what? Ball kick to go against the side of the head. Okay, now with the help of Rick, would you give him a snapping ball kick straight ahead? And a little slower, do a snapping instep. so they can see it. Okay, a little faster. Snapping ball, snapping instep. Now this is how I want you to practice it. It'll help. It'll get you used to changing from the ball of your foot to the instep. You should have this versatility. Thank you very much, Rick. All right, the next basic kick I want to work is called a snapping side kick. Now with the help of Rick, it'll be easy for me to show this to you. Now it's similar in cocking like we did on the snapping ball kick. Rick, would you cock your leg up? But it's exactly what it says. It's not the direction that we're kicking in that refers to a side kick. When we say the word side, we're referring to the portion of the foot or the side of the foot. As that leg is cocked up, Rick now shifts his weight to approximately a 45-degree angle to counterbalance the weight of this leg being out here. The leg is extended, and I'm going to have him do it full extended for you right now. Okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to make contact again with a slight bend in your knee. As we've learned, anything beyond that point turns into a push. Sometimes wasted, sometimes warranted, depending upon the situation. Make contact in this position, and we're going to use, Rick, would you face the camera with your right leg forward? Cock your knee up. If you see it from a neutral bow, the leg cocks up into this position. We're going to do it waist high again. The leg's going to come out. It's going to extend 3/4 of the way, and you're going to hit with this portion of the foot. Now, you notice that his foot is turned down. If the foot was flat like this, it would be a side kick, but a side heel kick, all right? That's not what we're doing right now. I want the edge of the foot turned down. I want this coked over so that you're going to hit with this portion of the foot. That's in line with the bone structure as well, so it makes it extremely strong and very resilient. Again, you can push it out, but as we get into thrusting kicks in a few moments, I'll show you why. But we're going to keep it at this point, about 3/4 of the way. Keep your supporting leg bent, snap it back to the cocking position, and then back down to a neutral stance. Rick, would you do that whole routine for me? All right, instead of thrusting, let's snap it now. Good. Now you see how quickly he's bringing that leg back? Do it again, Rick. And one more. And see how this supporting leg now also pivots. That means when Rick, just as he begins to execute the kick, there's a slight pivot on your supporting foot. That's important because it has a tendency of throwing your hip into it as well. Now we're not kicking from the hip, but I do want you to pivot into it because it throws more weight into the leg. Do it again. Exactly. That's a snapping side kick. Rick, would you do it facing that wall there? Go ahead. Good. Again. Good. Now, since you've learned foot maneuvers, different stance changes, start applying them with your kicks. We've learned a snapping ball kick. I want you to drag up and give me a drag up snapping ball kick. Give me a drag up snapping instep. Good. A drag up snapping side kick. And this is how you should start practicing them. Switch your stance. Give me a step through snapping ball kick. And back again. A step through snapping instep. Back again. Step through snapping side. And back again. Okay, good. Rick, would you face me in a horse? All right, now, remember about bringing that knee after you've kicked, whether it's a ball kick, instep, side kick, whatever, but bring the knee back, the foot back, and with the knee at the same level. Because we can go from this position, we could start in a cat stance, we could bring him forward a little bit, and then go to what? Keep the knee up, go to the solar plexus, and then what? We can use a side kick to the throat, come back to the position. But you've got to be able to do this because you don't always have the time to come back down to the ground, execute a new kick, back down to the ground, execute a new kick. I'm going to give you an exercise that'll show you how to do all of these kicks in their position. All right, now let's combine 3 kicks that we've learned so far. We've learned ball kick, instep kick, and a side kick, right? Let's put them together and see what we can come up with. If I'm faced with Rick in a fighting position, I could begin with what? An instep kick from this position, ball kick, right? And then a side kick at that position. Now, if you watch it a little slower, we go 1, 2, and then what? Right from here, I'm going to attack the back of the arm, injuring the arm as well. And when I did that side kick, it had a little bit of, what, a slice to it. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but that's a little more advanced. Rather than just kicking it straight on, I sliced it so I could purposely use it to carry me back out of the fight. And when it carried me out, it went back into what is this stance called? A twist stance or a crossover as we continue out from that position. All right, now I want to go over some do's and don'ts about kicking, and particularly in the ball kick. Now, one of the things that I do not want you to do is that as you execute your kick, and we'll do it from, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it from a horse stance. Is that as I shift my weight over to my supporting leg, and I bring my knee up, as I begin to execute the kick, do not do this. Don't compete with the leg by bringing your head or body forward. It's not to say that it won't work, but it will not work at its maximum. What you want to do is relax the muscles in your back and all the way down your hip by leaning back somewhat, or keeping it straight. But even if you lean back a little bit, it'll relax and give you more extension. Now, you can look at this as if imagination tells us that if we put a nail here, we tied a huge rubber band to it, about that wide, and we stretched that rubber band all the way down Rick's leg and tied it to another nail. Now, as Rick cocked his leg to kick, bring it up waist high, what's happening to the rubber band? It's starting to pull all the way down here. Now, at the point that Rick starts to, not yet, but as he starts to kick, he leans forward. The rubber band is now what? It's pulling from here as well as pulling from here. So he's getting pulled back. The leg's getting pulled back. All right, now, if he was to straighten up, and as he executes the kick, if he was to lean back, he's going to relax the pressure on the rubber band from up there, allowing the leg to reach its maximum force. All right, now, the rubber band, you say? What is the rubber band? The rubber band is all of the muscle structure from your neck down through your shoulders. And today's doctors will tell you they're all interrelated. One works off the other. That rubber band is your muscle groupings all the way down to the hip. And your butt is no more than part of your leg. It's not separate. Many people think it is, but it's not. And it's all tied together all the way down to your heel. And the moment you start bending forward, you're competing, and you're pulling away from that kick. Okay, Rick, would you do the kick again and lean forward as you kick? You can see, do it again. That's what I don't want you to do. In close range, you could get away with it. But if I had to kick Rick into the ribs, and I started to kick, and I bent as I do it, I'm not going to reach it. But if I was to lean back, I'm going to have more than enough reach to get into the ribs at that point. Rick, would you do it right for me? One more, fast. Remember it, it's a big help later on too. The next basic kick I want to work is the snapping knife edge kick. Now it's similar to the side kick, but what's happening in this kick is that we're not just using close to the heel of the foot, but we're going to use the entire edge of the foot. It's got to be used properly. Used improperly, you can become a danger to yourself. But I want you to learn it because you're not always in a position to use the side kick, so to speak. Now, side kick, as we know, the leg cocks up in this position. Snapping knife edge kick, the leg cocks, the foot cocks to what? To the supporting knee. So you make the shape of a 4, you might say. From this position, you just extend your leg. And as you extend it, you notice that my foot is at a 45-degree angle. And it's not turned or pivoted into the kick. So you bring it up, out and back. It's done with a snapping motion at this point. And with the help of Rick, I'll give you some examples, some targets that we would use on that. Rick, would you come over here, please? Now, for instance, if I get close enough, if I get into Rick, he has his guard up, but I manage to get in here, rather than taking the time to pivot into a side kick and a kick into the inside of the knee, it's unnecessary. It's time-consuming for that particular target. Rather, what I would do is, since my leg cocks up, is it's going to complement it, and that angle that I'm kicking him on will turn his leg for me anyway. I don't have to pivot to get that turn. If we do it slow, you'll see that my foot starts cutting up by the little toe, and then as I keep cutting through, it slices him back. It's a knife edge. It's like the edge of a knife. It cuts through. All right, now, come over here. The same thing occurs here. If you look at the angle at his knee, before I go any further, if you're going to kick somebody on the outside of their knee or anywhere near their knee, I hope it's a matter of life or death. Because if you hit somebody there, even in practice, whatever, too hard, you're going to hurt somebody permanently. It's a permanent injury, any way you look at it. All right, now getting back to the kick, rather than cocking the leg up for a side kick and having to pivot, it's unnecessary. Of course, it'll work, but it's unnecessary. With a knife edge kick, if I drag up and cock my leg up, you notice that the foot automatically copies or contours, complements that angle. That knee is on a 45. The edge of my foot is also going to be on that 45, and it slices as it comes through. All right, now, if I decided to start to use the other leg, I could slice with the knife edge kick to the thigh as well. I don't have to come through and push straight like this. All right, because I may want to carry myself over to the other side and then come up to the ribs and carry it this way. Now from a left neutral bow, that's what Rick is facing me in, he can bring his knee straight up and then he can pivot on his supporting leg, and you notice now that the leg turns to a horizontal position. It's paralleling the floor at this time. Now with the instep of his foot, he can go ahead and execute the kick. That's called a roundhouse kick. All right. Now he can use the ball of the foot as well and catch it this way. That's a little more advanced, and it's not necessary right now. We'll get into it a little bit later. I want you to kick with the instep of your foot. That's why I taught that in the very beginning. It comes back and then back down to a vertical position and back again. Rick, would you do one for us? That's exactly right. A little slower. Exactly. Now, it's a slingshot effect. That means, if you switch your stance, drop this hand for me. When I say a slingshot effect, is that you put all of this energy straight up into this vertical leg, all right? And just as it reaches the height that you want to hit at, let's say that we chose this target right about here. So that means that my foot, rather my knee, would have to point at that height. So that as it reaches that level and I begin to pivot, that's the target it's going to hit. Now it's a slingshot effect because all of that energy is sprung up into this, and then there's the pivot. Now you notice that my hand, when I come up to execute that kick, my hands are complementing, right? They're counterbalancing the kick all the way through. Now, there are other ways of doing a roundhouse kick. There's one that's called a wheel kick. It's synonymous with the way we're kicking here. But instead of bringing it up vertically, we're going to bring it around horizontally first. All right, this is fine, and they're both used, okay, at the right moment. But this kick now, we're going to bring the knee up horizontally first, execute the kick, and snap it back again, and go back to our starting point. Practice them both. They both have their value. Okay. Rick, if you would face the camera and left neutral bow. Now as Rick executes this kick straight on, go ahead, he brings the knee up, he keeps the supporting leg bent, he pivots, launches the kick out, hitting with the instep of the foot. He snaps it back to a vertical position and back again. Now Rick is particularly limber. He's naturally limber, he's built that way. He's one of these guys that really don't have to stretch a whole lot to kick high. But let me explain something before we go any further. A lot of you are saying, well, I want to kick high. Well, I stretch, and the next day or next week, I'm right back where I started from. If you're not built for high kicking, don't attempt it. All you're going to do is create an injury for yourself that won't heal properly, and you'll have trouble with it the rest of your life. I've been teaching for over 20 years, and this I know. If you're not a high kicker, it doesn't make any difference. Because particularly on the street, as we found out, put your guard up, and especially in tight clothes, if I'm wearing a pair of tight jeans, some slippery shoes, I'm not going to be kicking high anyway, even if I was naturally a high kicker. But you've got to be realistic about what you have. What are your greatest attributes? Rick is one of these guys, like I said, who can kick high. He can do it. He's built that way. But if you can't kick high, you can still do the same kick at a low level. Then, if you're that excited about kicking somebody in the head, kick him in the head. All right, but be realistic. All right, now, Rick, would you face the camera again? Put your guard up. Now this time I want you to execute the kick coming all the way around. This is 12 o'clock facing you. Rick is going to now cock his leg over to 2 o'clock. As he reaches that point, then he's going to pivot a little bit and launch the kick. All right, now that's what many people call a wheel kick, but it's still in the roundhouse category for us right now. It snaps back to the hip and then back again. Rick, would you do that kick again? Good, a little lower. Go. And so forth. Practice them both. They both have their value. And for instance, as I was telling you before, Rick, would you come over here? Let's say Rick's facing me in a left neutral bow. Move over a little bit. And he was swinging a club or a fist over my head. And I wanted to get off to the side. Well, it's quite obvious now, since you've been watching these tapes, that I could use a what? A roundhouse kick at this point, right? It's not necessary, as Rick comes over, for me to come up vertically first and then execute it. All right? So it doesn't really have its place there. The second version does. We don't cock the leg, but in reality it comes from point of origin, from the ground up. The knee comes up because the knee is going to dictate where the foot's going to go. So the knee comes up and points to the target, the foot goes there, as simple as that. Now, if I was freestyling with Rick, sparring, he was in a right neutral bow, and I purposely went vertically to start my kick, and he went to block it. Go ahead, block my kick. And he kept blocking it over and over again. As he blocked it, I can flip over the top of that foot. Now that's where the first version is tremendously effective, because as we get into sparring tapes, you're going to find out you're going to have to really bait the guy, and you might say condition him to do certain things. The next basic kick I want to work is called the back kick. We'll define it as a snapping back kick. And basically all it is, and I'll do it from a right side horse stance. Right side because my right leg is facing you. From a horse stance, I'm going to kick with my right leg. So I'm going to shift my weight to the left leg, keep it bent, and I'm going to slide my knee over till it's flush against the other knee. Not ahead of it. Don't do that. All right, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But keep it flush. Bring the heel up, because we're going to hit with the back of the heel. Now, as I begin to launch the kick, I shift my weight forward, execute the kick, and bring it back. If I don't shift my weight forward, this is what happens. The muscles start binding. They start competing. Don't do that. You're only going to hurt yourself, too. Some people are very limber naturally. They can get away with it, but the average person cannot. Bend your supporting leg, knee to knee, lift that heel up, lean forward, execute the kick. Now, go to 3/4 of extension, snap it back, come back down again. And you'll notice something about this kick, that power comes when I lift that heel up. As I shift my weight forward, it has a natural tendency of what? But throwing that leg into the motion. So the upper half of my body really is contributing to it, not only just in counterbalancing it, but as well as pushing weight into it, using marriage of gravity. Also, as I begin to shove my weight into it, I keep my supporting leg bent. I'm very conscious of that. I extend it out and I snap it back. From this position, that's all it is. And bring that leg back faster than it went out. Now, with the help of Rick, I'll give you some examples of how this can be used. What targets? There, good. Rick, face me in a horse. Now, when you have somebody that you're practicing with, look down your shoulder. Not so much over it, but look down the outside of your shoulder. Slide over, knee to knee. Look at your target. If you're too close, move up a little bit. Slide over, and now what are my hands, what are they doing? But they're starting now to complement me, counterbalance me. As I slide over, something has to take that place. I don't slide over and throw them this side, but I bring them over to this side to take where my foot was. I'm counterbalanced now. I'm comfortable. As I bring my heel up, my hands follow my kick, and then I'm back again. Slide over, drop your hands for practice, look down your shoulder so it's not your best friend you're hitting. Lean forward to counterbalance it, and launch the kick, and then back again. That's basically all there is to it. Remember that when you come over to keep your knee pointed towards the ground. Don't point your knee out, because that comes a snapping side kick, a snapping backside kick. It'll work, but it's not the best to use because the muscles are not in line with each other and they're not working to their maximum. I want you to keep your muscle groups always aligned. Bring your heel up, extend it, keep that knee pointed so the foot is vertical towards the ground, and then bring it back. Look at your opponent, and then back again. Now, to give you an idea of how this kick can be used beyond from a stationary point from a horse stance, with the help of Rick, I'll give you some targets and some foot maneuvering to use to help work this kick. All right, Rick, would you put your guard up? Now, most people wouldn't think you could use a back kick from this position, but you got to understand it's how you position yourself during the attack or during the defense. If I was to do, what's this called, but a rear crossover, as we do a rear crossover into Rick, I can cross in, execute the back kick, and I'll do it a little slower from this position. I keep my knee, pointed towards the ground, execute the heel, and then back again. Now, if we take the kicks we've learned so far, I'm going to put them together, and we'll wind up with that back kick. First of all, if we face our opponent, we could start with the roundhouse kick, ball kick, instep kick, slicing knife edge, cross out. If I wanted to follow up, I could do a rear crossover, back kick, and back into position, and then I'm done. All right, the next two basics I want to work on are the front and back scoop kicks. Now, I want you to watch what I'm doing. If I face 9 o'clock in a right neutral bow, I step back, exaggerated, and I step forward. All right, that doesn't look like a whole lot, and how is that going to have some power in what we're talking about? Rick, can I borrow you for a second, please? As Rick faces me in a right neutral bow, if I was fighting Rick, and for some reason I got in close enough, all right, if he checked my hand, I couldn't punch him, check with the other hand up there. If for some reason my hands were tied, I'm really too close to cock a leg to kick. All right, but from this position, a lot of people still think, well, I'm basically out of kick, and I can't really quite reach that other leg effectively. But I can pull out, right? But when I pull out, why waste the pull out when I can pull out with a scoop kick? Now, a scoop kick is no more than the reverse motion of a forward step or a forward kick. So all I do is I shift my weight back, bend my supporting leg, bring it up, curl my toes up, and as I do, I scoop and catch the groin area. Now, this is not just restricted to the groin itself. If I take Rick from this position, switch your stance, please. And from this angle, move your foot over here a little bit. You don't have to pick this target. You can scoop the inside of the calf as well. And you can use the inside edge of your foot as you scoop it out. Again, we're from here, from this position. Then I can scoop again from the groin. If I had Rick somewhat swept and buckled down, I can scoop from this position and over to the head as well. Now, the way that I want you to practice the front scoop kick is to start in a neutral stance. We'll use a left neutral at this point. Shift your weight back to your supporting leg. Turn your shoulders from a 45 to a 90-degree angle. Curl your toes up, and just as you reach approximately where you think your target is going to be, for instance, the groin area, snap it back and step back into a right neutral bow. From this side, watch it from this angle. I turn my shoulders 90 degrees, I shift my weight, bring my toes curled up, about to where my target is, snap it back, and back down again. Now you're going to say, well, I can't get any speed out of that. You can get a lot of speed out of it if you use your hands. And what I mean by using your hands is this kick in particular, I want the hands not to be frozen in a fixed position. But as my leg goes back, what does my left hand do? It also has to counterbalance, because the reverse of a step is no more than this. If you're walking backwards, your hands will naturally counterbalance each other, right? So from this position, as we shift our weight, I want this hand coming up to counterbalance the empty space here, and it lends impetus to the move. That's what the hands do in reality, and so forth. You can move very quickly as you get used to it. Stay loose and relaxed. All right, now the next scoop kick is a reverse of that front scoop kick, and it's no more than a rear scoop kick. All right, with the help of Rick, if he would go to a left neutral bow, if you watch, again, I'm in close to my opponent. I may have struck him, or I may not. He may have blocked it. But on my way out, rather than leaving with nothing, on my way out, I'm going to leave with something as I come out, whether it be to the groin area or whether it be to the inside of his knee. It makes no difference. As I scoop from here, then again I can what? I can scoop the head from this position, and so forth. They're both very versatile kicks. And as we go further into these tapes, there's a little more advanced ways of executing these kicks. There are what we call stiff leg raises and so forth. I don't want to get into them now because they take a little more expertise. They're used for the more adept. But the scoop kicks, I wanted to introduce them at this level because, well, basically they're just exaggerated steps. I want you to learn to use them. They're very practical. They work in areas that most people don't think that they could get kicked from. All right, the next basic I want to work is the knee kick. The strongest weapon that you have. It is the most powerful. It's not the most versatile. And again, like the elbow, when I taught that elbow strike, you have to get in close to use it. It's extremely strong. It has a lot of mass behind it. It has a lot of leverage behind it as well. Now, a knee kick is exactly that. It's a knee kick. It's the first part of, for instance, a snapping ball kick. Here's the beginning of it, then your kick goes out. But this part right here by itself is the kick. It's extremely powerful, and it is versatile, not as much as other weapons, but let me give you an example with the help of Rick. Okay, Rick, come on over here. Obviously, there's a lot of ways of using this. If Rick was to grab me around the throat, I could do a number of techniques that we'll learn later on. But once I'm in a position to where I can carry on, imagine bringing his head down and sandwiching in it with my knee. And what's nice about a knee kick is that once you're there, you're able to launch numerous other kicks as well. The ball kick to the knee, side kick, instep. I can bounce the knee into what? Into a scoop kick. All right? So it's a good position. You might say that using a knee in a fight gives you a neutral position for the knee to work from. Now, take this from another angle. If we were fighting, and I managed to shuffle in, grab and punch, and hit my opponent, that's fine. But if I shuffled in and at the same time went to what? A closed kneel stance, the knee is going to strike the outside of the calf muscle. And if I want to continue a step further, I can rotate it and snap the ankle by dropping on to another closed kneel and using the knee. As well as not only as well as down there, but up into the thigh area as well. Many people would go so far as to use it up higher than the waist. It can be used to bring a guy's head down into the action. There's a lot of ways that you can use it, and I do like it again, particularly because now I have a lot of choices in which to use. On my way out, there it is again. And if that's not enough, if I'm not satisfied, I can move from that neutral position. Thank you, Rick. Now to practice this, that goes back to standing on one leg. In the earlier tapes, I told you that it was important to learn to stand on one leg. Now you're learning why. If you can't do it, you can't do this very well. Practice it by coming up, holding the position and back. Hitting your hands, give yourself something to hit. Work on it, let it be a part of your repertoire of motion. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. If you remember back when we learned how to parry and block with our hands, the legs too can emulate the hands. Now with the help of Rick, could you come on over? If he goes from a left neutral bow, now I'm only going to touch upon this because we do have an advanced tape on using legs as parries and advanced kicking. But I want you to know it now so that you get a better picture of what you're going to be learning. If Rick comes in with a right punch, you can do a right inward parry and then immediately come back with the same foot. Scoop kick and then you're out. Now that gives you an idea that the leg is versatile. If, for instance, I'm on the beach or someplace on the ground and Rick comes in with a punch from here, I can use an outward parry and then from that position use a strike. So this gives you an idea of how your legs, like your hands, can be just as versatile. Now primarily, we've worked with our kicks in a snapping type of motion. And a snap kick is probably the most practical way to execute your kick, especially in a street confrontation. As I said before, you don't want somebody to pick your leg up, throw you to the ground, or hold you until you're off balance, or for somebody else to hit you. Get the leg back as quickly as possible. For the more adept, then we go into thrusting kicks. And I do want to show you how to thrust your kicks, and you should start practicing them. But it's for a different reason. When you thrust a kick in, you're locking the joint, particularly the knee joint, you're locking it shut. You're elongating your hip, you're pivoting more on your supporting foot, and you're driving your opponent away from you. And as I said, if it's intended, it's a good way of using your kicks, or even your strikes. We thrust strikes as well. Now, with the help of Rick, if you face the camera in a left neutral bow, Rick, give him a right snapping ball kick. Okay, now this time, Rick is going to bring his foot out, but he's going to thrust that ball kick and hold it out for a brief moment. Go ahead. And bring it back. Now, what's happening here, Rick, would you face 9 o'clock in a neutral bow, is on a snap kick, when the leg comes up, the hips stay parallel. And it's only from the knee that you snap it from, and the hips pretty much stay parallel at that point, and then it snaps back. But on a thrust kick, what happens? As the leg starts to come out, the right hip starts to elongate and starts to go further out and pierce its target. So it is definitely a thrust or a push into the target. And you can see where the hips are now. His hip is on a 45-degree angle. And if I push his hip back to a parallel position, his foot also has to go back and pivot. But as it comes out again, watch his supporting foot as Rick thrusts and elongates that in there. Now to help the thrust, and a good way for you to practice it, as it reaches this point, this hand should pretend like it's pulling a rope. And it's going to pull down as he starts to push. A little further down with the hand, there we go. And that, people, is how I want you to practice that thrust kick. Now watch Rick do it by himself in the air, and watch what that right hand does, how it like pulls that leg up there. Go ahead. Good. You hold it out there a little second longer, and then back. All right, so that's a thrusting ball kick. Now, a thrusting side kick. Now this is particularly helpful, especially when we get into tournament sparring. And if you start working on it now, it's going to be a lot easier for you. Now what happens on a side kick, as Rick turns to cock his leg, the knee is lifted up, waist high, because that's where he's going to kick me. Now if he was just going to snap it, he would pivot some on that supporting foot, and only, like we said before, go to a 3/4 reach. But now if he's going to thrust it, he's going to pivot on that foot and elongate his hip. And if he watches that hand goes down, how much more forward that hip goes, and how now it's driving into me. All right, now that's the posture of a thrusting side kick. Now, to practice that, pretend like you're going to do a thrusting ball kick. And at the last moment, as you're starting to thrust, you're starting to pivot, not quite yet, but at the very last moment, almost at full extension into a thrusting ball kick, pivot and thrust your side. That way you'll get maximum power into that kick. You won't lose any of it. It's still, all of that energy is traveling on one line. Now watch it again. He's doing a thrusting ball kick, but just before he gets full extension, he pivots and elongates that hip and thrusts the side kick in and back. Watch him do it by himself. And that's exactly the way. Do it again. Good. All right, now, roundhouse kick, as we did before. A lot of people think, well, can you really thrust a roundhouse kick, and is there any value to thrusting it? Well, there is. Okay, Rick, if you put your guard up. When Rick does a snapping roundhouse kick, he cocks it up vertically and snaps it in and out. Try that again. But if Rick wanted to cock the leg up, pivot more, a little further, and elongate and lock that leg out, he's going to have more of a drive and more of a push on me rather than just snapping it into me. And you find out as he starts to thrust it, instead of the foot hitting out in this area where I was, as it made contact, it starts pushing and thrusting, and he locks it out and driving me back. So yeah, it can be done. Rick, would you show that for him? Exactly. One more time, though. All right, good. Now, that brings us to thrusting back kick. All right, now this is important and widely used. If you put your right leg forward, Rick, right neutral bow, put your guard up. I want you to give him a rear crossover and a snapping back kick. Good, very nice. One more. See how that snap is? He gets that foot back faster than he put it out. Now this time he's going to cross over. As he brings his leg up, this is where it normally would hit with a bend in the knee, and then he would snap it back. But at this point now he's going to elongate his knee and lock it out. And basically that's all there is to it. He's going to lock it out and make it more of a push. Go ahead. And thrust it into its target. He may want to drive me back into the shoji screens and then back. Rick, would you show that for him? And thrust it out. Good. A little deeper thrust in there. Go. Exactly. Now to give you an application of how this kick works, I want you to watch as Rick, if he was rushing me and I had no way of getting off to the side. Let's say that I'm in a room where it's crowded and I couldn't step off to the side as he rushed. And I didn't want to use my fist if it's a larger man, larger than myself. If he comes rushing in, and if I just snap the kick, it may hurt him. It may even break a bone, but that's not necessarily going to stop his forward momentum. So as Rick rushes in and we snap it, I'm still dealing with an onrush, okay? And he may be able to take that pain and hold on to me, and that renews his hopes of probably winning the fight. But if he rushes in, and I can't get off to the side, then it's important that I use a thrust kick. Now when practicing these kicks, go back to the preceding tapes and employ all of the maneuvers that we learned in, the foot maneuvers, your basic blocks, your basic punches, your basic strikes, step-throughs, crossovers, and so forth, and put your kicks with all of them too. You can take any position to start from. You can start, for instance, from a cat stance. Make sure your guard is up. One hand can be low to protect the groin area or the stomach area. The other hand can be up to protect the areas above the solar plexus. You can start with a snapping ball kick. You can plant and shuffle with a forearm strike. You can roll it over to a back knuckle, maybe to another hand sword. You can cross out into a neutral bow with an inward block. You can drag up, give me a back kick. Cross back, step off, and imagine somebody in front of you. Give him a roundhouse kick, another back knuckle. Come over and claw the guy's face. Imagine the people that you're fighting. Come back with a snapping ball kick, a drag up roundhouse, a step through ball kick, plant, cross back again, cover, step back, add a hand sword, come back with another hand sword. Use a back kick from a horse position, come back up, use a snapping ball kick, off at an angle. Come across, use your knees, but use your imagination. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tape on basic Kenpo kicking. I want you to understand that it is a basic kicking tape, but there's nothing really basic in a confrontation. We do have an advanced kicking tape later on down in the series, so practice these kicks now. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next tape.